Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the big conversation. It is my honor and privilege to be having a conversation tonight with Mike Cohen. Mike Cohen is someone who, if you ever come to Woodside Park Synagogue, you can't not know. He's that guy who greets you when you walk in with a huge smile on his face. And he is a really well-loved member of the community. And I'm really excited to have a conversation with him and hear his pearls of wisdom and his story and things that he can share with us. So without further ado, Mike, you're live on camera. Thank you so much for joining us. As I said, really excited to have this conversation with you.
Rabbi, I don't think you were talking about me. I think you were talking about my twin brother. I glare at everybody when they come in.
But you glare with a smile, Mike. You know, we know to behave when you're around, but we still very much being in your presence. Enjoy bringing your presence. So. Part of this big conversation, part of the idea is that we get to hear from all segments of the community, young and old, new members, established members, doesn't matter who you are. If you're a member, we'd love to hear from you. And just it's a way of having people feel connected, especially during these challenging times when people might feel somewhat disconnected from the community. And I think the big conversation has really been a great way of bringing people together and allowing people from the community to just meet someone else and hear their story. So thank you again for coming on. And I guess I want to just ask, first of all, how are you doing? Long time no see. How have you been surviving the past few months? I'm sure it's not been terribly easy for you.
Well, I say this in a positive way. My wife, Alav Sholem, died almost 4 years ago. And she was in hospital for virtually a year. So I've had almost 5 years of apprenticeship of how to live on your own and look after yourself. But having said that, the unique thing about Woodside Park is the community. And no day goes by when I don't get a phone call from somebody wanting to know how I'm doing. I get my shopping done for me without any hesitation. And every Friday night I get a meal made for me. So how's that for a community?
Amazing.
Just marvelous.
Amazing.
We
nice
have
to be able.
I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The single biggest problem, the vacuum that has been created by this terrible virus, is the lack of connection to the community and the loss of social life. No question. So that's the only difficulty I have. But fortunately, in the last few weeks, people have started to come and have a chat in the garden when it's been sunny, and so I don't feel totally disconnected.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Mike. Is there anything which you've learned, sort of anything new you've come to understand through this past few months of just being stuck at home? Any insights that have come your way? Doesn't have to be any, but. People have been saying that they've had new understandings or new ways of seeing things. I'm wondering whether that's been the same for you.
Well, would you like the good news or the bad news?
We'll take the bad news first, please.
Bad news is that I have a wall chart because I used to lead a rather busy life. I have a wall chart telling me what I'm doing on a day-by-day basis. And if you look at my wall chart for March, which has not changed, I might add, there's a big arrow saying this is when time stopped. So the bad thing is that when time stopped for me, I had about 30 jobs lined up that I was going to do, from clearing up the house and all the junk that's accumulated over the years to looking after the garden, etc. And I can tell you how many of those jobs I've done. 3.
That's good. It's not bad. That's you're 10%. You're 10% of the way there.
Yes. The good news is that I do think you have to have a positive outlook on this thing. It's going to go on for months and months and months. Most people, I'm sure, would have told you this. We'll be looking at the screen, like doing these conversations next summer, I have to tell you, as far as I'm concerned. Viruses don't grow off the trees, they take years to develop.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I do think we have to get our mindset to understand that we're in for the long haul. So that's why I feel I have a positive note about it. I enjoy listening to music.
Mike, it's always inspiring to see people like yourself who come on with such positivity, and like I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, that to me is who you are. You are full of positivity, and that really reflects onto other people. So it's really an honor to have you on and really share that positivity with myself and with everyone that's watching. I will say, by the way, to everyone who's watching, it was really nice last week when people sort of commented as well, and we had them up on the screen. It means that our good friend Mike can see that those of you who are watching are appreciating what he's saying, and can send him some support over. So if you are watching and you want to send over a comment, please do, and we'll showcase you on the main screen. But meanwhile, Mike, you have a fascinating life, and your life's still going strong until 120, please God. But can you share with us some of the interesting moments in your life and how life took you to where you are right now?
Well, I suppose there are several factors. I lived in a very un-Jewish area most of my life, apart from the war days, the war times when we were being evacuated when the bombing was quite heavy in London. I lived in a fairly dangerous place, King's Cross, that was getting bombed on a fairly frequent basis. So we were going backwards and forwards to the country and coming back to London. But I spent from the age of 10 to 18 in King's Cross after the war. I went to a school where I was the only Jewish boy in the school. And when you have a name like Cohen, it's like having a neon sign over your head. And at a very early age, I learned that if I couldn't take care of myself, both mentally and verbally, then I was going to get trodden under by a lot of very rough kids. So I learned to box, I learned to defend myself. And although it's frowned upon today, it gives you a great deal of confidence, self-confidence, and a certain ease of dealing with people. So I've never regretted either my background or the sort of life that I led in my early days. They were important to me. Later
I'm glad
on,
you've shared that with me, Mike. I know to be careful around you nowadays. I better behave myself in shul with all your boxing.
It's a skill which I took with me when I became quite involved with CST some years ago now. I think I was one of the first people to retire from CST. They threw me out when I got to be 75. But my physical fitness stood in good stead for me. So I've never regretted that background of mine. As for everything else, well, I think I've enjoyed life.
You enjoyed life, yeah. That definitely shows through as well. What parts of life before we went live, you were telling me about all the different hobbies that you have, and my gosh, you definitely have plenty of
when I was a young man,
hobbies.
When I was 24, I was introduced to skiing. I needed a winter holiday. My wife and I hadn't had a holiday for several years. We'd recently had the birth of my son, and so we went skiing, the three of us, the little baby, Susanna, Valerie, my wife, and myself. And I took to skiing like a duck to water. It was just something that came to me fairly quickly. My wife hated it, so she spent most of the holiday slapping the child around on a sleigh. But for the next 25 years, I went skiing every year. I had a group of friends that I met up with, and my wife let me off the leash for a couple of weeks. And and that kept me very fit and very active, and I enjoyed it, every moment of it. And I regretted having to give it up, but I had quite a serious accident. And that put pay to me and my skiing. So that was a very important part of my life. And I've also been a very enthusiastic sailor. And I've had the good fortune to have sailed around a lot of the Mediterranean, from Cyprus to Israel, Israel to Turkey, Turkey to Greece, Greece to Italy, Italy to France. So
Wow.
that's quite a journey. That was over a period of 10 years. I had a friend with a boat moored in the Mediterranean, and 2 or 3 times a year we would go onto the boat and sail it from one area to another. So that was an important part of my life too.
That's amazing. That sounds very, very exciting and fun. Gosh, you should take me with you sometime, if you don't mind. If
No,
my
I'm
wife
sure.
lets me. I have to teach my wife how to let me off the leash. But yeah, that sounds really. So you are not only someone who has lots of different hobbies for your own life, but you also are a very active member of the community, and you do a lot for our community as well. One of them you just mentioned. You are part of the security team, working tirelessly to make sure that we are all safe when we come to shul. Your earpiece is always in, and you're ready to act if need be. But also, which is something I really wanted to talk about tonight as well, was the Israel committee, the My Israel committee that you do for Woodside Park, and that you raise money for Israel. I'm just wanted to know what motivated you to get involved with that, and why you are still so passionate about it and still keep at it at the ripe age that you are.
Well, that's a good question. I'm pleased you asked it, because any opportunity to publicize the work of the Israel Committee and the fundraising that we do, I appreciate, and we do need that type of input. Okay, Israel. Well, it was important for me. I suppose from a very early age, from when I was getting beaten up at school, I decided if you can't beat them, you have to join them. So I embraced my Judaism, and certainly a part of that was being a very enthusiastic supporter for Israel. So right from the very beginning, from almost the earliest ages, certainly from 1948, I've been there or thereabouts. When I qualified as a pharmacist, I said to my parents, I was still living at home, and I said to my parents, I'm off to Israel now. And they went bonkers. I also...
What year was that, Mike?
But
what year was that?
That was 1956.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I can understand why they would have gone bonkers back then.
Well, exactly that. I think the timing was very important. Plus, I was going out with a young lady who later became my wife, Valerie, and she wasn't that enthusiastic about going to Israel. But had I been unattached, I most probably would have said to my parents, like, goodbye, I'm old enough to take care of myself, and off I would have gone. So it's one of those minor regrets in my life that I never did it. I, like most Jews in this community, have a lot of connections to Israel. So it's a very important part of my life. So when the opportunity came, I happened to bump into the guy who was the then chairman of the Israel Committee some years ago, Gary Lyons, and I asked him, did he need another member of the committee? He didn't just say yes, please. He actually put his arm around my neck and said, if you don't join, I'll throttle you. So that's how I was taken on board. And this was
presumably didn't know that you were a boxer at that point.
No, he did it lightheartedly, and he's still a very good friend of mine. So I joined the Israel Committee, it must be almost 20 years ago now. And then I then got saddled with the job of chairman about 8 years ago, and that's been my destiny ever since. So let's go back to Israel and particularly my Israel. It was thanks to the offices of Gary Lyons that we actually found my Israel. It was a charity started by an ex-JFS girl, Danny Franks, who was going off to Israel to make Aliyah, and she was talking to a lady on the plane about making Aliyah and so on. And it was the lady who gave her the idea that there was a lot of charity work to be done in Israel, and she should look into it. And so, in the course of her work, she has discovered that there was a whole strata of underprivileged people in Israel who weren't getting state aid, who were totally dependent upon charity, and who needed support. But that's not the key feature about My Israel. The thing that appealed to the original Israel committee when I joined it and when we became supporters of My Israel was that there is no administrative costs. When we raise £1,000 for My Israel, it's £1,000 spent on the charity. The administration, and there are 3 individuals who work here in England looking after My Israel, and I presume there are other countries, plus the organization in Israel. All of it is self-funded by going to patrons who appreciate that they are actually funding the operation of My Israel. So that the money that is collected, and we're talking about considerable sums now, from the early days when we were almost the only organization supporting My Israel outside of Israel, to today, it's grown enormously. And if you go onto their website, you will see the donations that are made by bar mitzvah boys and bat mitzvah girls, and people like myself who've reached the ripe old age of a second bar mitzvah, etc. But the charities themselves, every one of them is a worthwhile cause. And the Israel Committee are quite judicious about choosing which charities within the My Israel umbrella that we support. Every year or every other year, we go through the individual cases and decide whether we should be, which of the charities we ought to be adopting. And all of them get a fair shake from us for a couple of years. And we raise in the region of £8,000 to £10,000 a year, thanks totally to the community at Woodside Park who support us in our endeavors. We run a quiz and we run golf tournaments, and we have all sorts of activities where we try to raise funds for My Israel.
It's amazing. And I think especially with what's going on currently in Israel, this is an extremely important time to be thinking about Israel and thinking about how much support they need at the moment, because they are really, really struggling with coronavirus, and things are quite scary out there at the moment. So this is a real opportune time to really be talking about this and be thinking about them and doing something. Mike, can I plug this event which is coming up soon, which is going to be supporting My Israel as well? For those of you that haven't seen it yet, together with Mike, myself and Mike are arranging a whiskey tasting event on Sunday evening, Sunday the 12th, where whiskey will be delivered to your door, and it's going to be a lot of fun via Zoom, where someone's going to be teaching us exactly the different tastes of whiskey. But what's nice about this is that this is really going to be supporting 2 very dear organizations to Woodside Park Synagogue. Number 1 is the My Israel committee, which, as we just heard, the amazing work they do. And number 2 is Woodside Park Synagogue Chesed, which is something which Mike also touched on briefly at the beginning, but that both of these organizations are ones we should really be thinking about at the moment. That the organization that's helping our community members to function well during this challenging time, and My Israel, which is helping others to across the pond, not across the pond, but in Israel, to really survive and thrive during this time. So I'm going to come back to you, Mike, in a sec. But for people that are interested, this is the link over here to sign up and support these 2 organizations. Mike, we're going to finish very soon because we've both got other places to get to tonight. And I wanted to thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your life story with us, for sharing your passions with us, sharing the incredible work that you do for our community. If there's one final message you wanted to share with everyone watching, what would it be, Mike? What do you have to say to everyone before we sign off?
Keep smiling.
Keep smiling. Excellent. You know what? That coming from you, I'm not surprised that was the one you chose, because you really do practice what you preach. You're always smiling. And the great thing about smiling is that if you smile, one can't help but smile back. And that's something I've experienced with you in shul and seeing you on a Shabbat morning. And I'm going to miss seeing you in shul. Richard Dreyfus, by the way, says he's really looking forward to it. I'm assuming he means the whiskey tasting event. So yeah, Richard, looking forward to seeing you there as well.
No, he's more worried about me seeing Pat. That's what it is.
He's also written over there, you haven't got a boxer's nose. So
no, I do have a whole load of skin that was taken off of my nose.
Sure, you and Richard are dear friends. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure for me to just hear from different people from the community. Joanna Diamond, that's true. Keep smiling and the world will smile with you. By the way, thanks so much to Joanna. Yeah, go on, Mike. Yep.
Can I have a last word? I think I'm going to speak for the whole of this community to say what a breath of sunshine you were coming to our community, you and the Reverton, and how much we're going to miss you not being here. Please God, you won't be totally divorced from Woodside Park when you wander off to the Hoyka Fenster.
Thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And coming for you, I take that as a compliment, because you don't just say things when you don't mean them, as I've experienced over the past. That's good. It means when you do say them, I can take the compliment. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for your comments. And keep safe. Looking forward to seeing whoever can come back to shul, back in shul. And we wait for the day that everyone can come back to shul, to the same old shul that we remember. But until then, we'll be getting together like this, supporting each other, getting together as a community, and keep smiling, as Mike just told us. So have a good night, everyone, and looking forward to seeing you on Sunday night at the whiskey tasting event.
Yeah.
That's us for now. Bye-bye.